remember the man who was turning up to take those driving theory tests? He's not the real candidate. He's part of a gang who'll pass your driving test for you, if you pay them enough. But West Midlands Police and the Driving Standards Agency think they've tracked the man in the CCTV footage down, and this is the place where he works. If they're right about him, he's put a lot of unqualified drivers on our roads.
Police have gone in with one of my colleagues. We're going to speak to the main manager and arrange for our target to come out and arrest him, probably in the reception area.
Officers inside have immediately found their suspect. Police believe this might be another coat that's been spotted on CCTV.
We've got a very good impersonator in custody. Yes, a good day, because if at the end of it, when we've interviewed him, we know more about the organisation and can build the investigation further, I'll be very happy.
Fake driving test applicants are a major worry for driving examiners.
If we're getting impersonators going on to theory tests, again, that's quite serious in road safety terms, because it means that we could potentially have people getting a driving licence who haven't got that skill and knowledge to be able to drive safely.
The Driving Standards Agency fraud team have more than 1,000 ongoing investigations. Anyone found guilty of paying this man to take a test for them will have their licence revoked. The DSA suspect that could be as many as 100 people who are driving without passing their test. And this man said he was a doctor and a soldier. A fake. It takes at least 5 years to qualify as a doctor or a dentist. But some people, they can't be bothered with all that hard work, and they are practicing on people like you and me. Meet the fake dentist. We have a lot of trust in our dentists. We turn to them in an emergency and rely on them to anaesthetise us and keep us free from pain. But imagine finding out yours is a fake. This is Jeff Grierson from South London. He spent almost £1,000 having crowns on 2 damaged teeth. But for Jeff, the dental work wasn't the big sting. That came when he got a visit from a fraud investigator from the NHS.
Came round one evening, asked me all about different work I'd had with this so-called dentist, and telling me several other people, quite a few people in the area had as well. There'd probably be an HIV test required.
Jeff was stunned. It seemed the dentist who'd worked on him wasn't a dentist at all. He'd conned all his patients. His name was Omid Amidi Mazahiri. Mazahiri was treating hundreds of patients. They'd all believed he was a qualified dentist, but he had no proper training at all. His scam was uncovered by the NHS counter-fraud team. The unit was set up more than 10 years ago. Frighteningly, one of their tasks is to track down fraudsters who are posing as qualified medical professionals.
It was an anonymous telephone call to our free phone fraud and corruption reporting line, and somebody alerted us to the activities of both Mazahiri and Miss Azari, who was a dentist working with him.
There were reports of horror stories in the dentist's chair. Sometimes no anaesthetic was used. Sometimes the work done collapsed almost immediately. A syringe was even dropped down someone's throat. An investigation by the counter-fraud team revealed that Mazahiri had spent more than a year working on patients. He was making a fortune despite having no qualifications or training. The fraud had gone undetected because Mazahiri's girlfriend Mogjan was a qualified dentist working at the same practice. She had put through the paperwork as if she had treated the patients. Jeff Grierson, like the other patients, had been fooled by the fake dentist veneer.
And I was quite surprised, to be honest with you, because I mean, I would have sat in the chair 2 seconds if someone had started dropping things or, you know, had problems with syringes. So I'm a bit of a coward at the dentist anyway, so I'd have been out that seat like a shot.
Following the investigation, Mazahiri was jailed for 2 years. Mogjan Azari, his girlfriend, was sentenced to a year. It was discovered that Mazahiri's only knowledge came from working as a dental technician, and the list of things an untrained person doesn't know is frightening.
They may have no knowledge of cross-infection control measures, which are so important in this period of hepatitis and HIV risk that most individuals are aware of.
Investigators were unsure if he had used proper sterilisation techniques. That meant Jeff and all the other patients had to be tested for the HIV virus. Thankfully, all the tests came back negative, but Jeff's certainly not impressed with what the fake dentist did for him.
I was eating something and all of a sudden one of these gold caps that you put in came out. You know, it's quite embarrassing really at the time, annoying as well.
But it's simple to check that your dentist is properly qualified.
Contact the General Dental Council directly, or perhaps more easily to visit the General Dental Council website and to search the dental register for the information relating to their dentist.
This is Georgina Miles and Craig Colclough on their wedding day. Craig had swept Georgina off her feet with tales of his army doctor days and his new life as a successful psychiatrist.
I thought I'd finally found someone who I could go off on the crazy adventures with, and I was just very excited and very happy.
Georgina was also an aspiring officer in the Territorial Army and had introduced Craig to her friends and officers in the regiment. He'd won them over too, so much so that they offered him the role of Chief Medical Officer in Georgina's regiment, the 36th Territorial Army Signals.
I believe he was responsible for about 200 soldiers across the entire regiment.
The couple sped off for an idyllic honeymoon in the Maldives. But back at home, Georgina's sister had her doubts. None of Craig's family or his friends came to the ceremony, and she decided to do an internet search on the supposed ex-army major.
She called me the day after I returned and she said, perhaps I want to go and look for myself. There were lots of pages about a time he'd spent in Prague on an expat site where he'd been involved in banking. And it was all very strange and certainly nothing to do with being a doctor and certainly nothing to do with an officer in the British Army. I looked on the General Medical Council website where you can enter a name and see if they've been registered as a doctor. And I tried his name and he'd never been registered. A few other things started to fall into place, a few other emails from people saying they knew Craig and that I ought to be very careful because he was nothing that he said he was. So that evening when he got home from work, he was waiting outside in the park because I think he knew something was up. I'd been a bit funny on the phone saying we needed to have a talk about a few things that I'd read on the internet. And he wouldn't come up, so I went down to see him. And he was sitting there with his head hung low and I said, "My name's Georgina Miles, who are you?" Because it seemed quite clear that I knew nothing about this man who just 2 weeks ago I'd married.
But it wasn't just an emotional tragedy. Georgina had introduced Colclough to her colleagues at the TA Signal Regiment. They'd been so taken in by his charm, they'd offered him the post of Chief Medical Officer. There was a delay in checking his qualifications, so he had been treating soldiers for months.
You know, it's an organisation that I loved and I was immensely proud to be part of. And I'd introduced him to the regiment and I was terribly ashamed. And I'd sort of all the things he'd done to, you know, the soldiers who were very good people.
Further investigation revealed that Colclough had spent a few months in the Royal Marine Reserves when he was younger. He'd served as a medical technician there, but he certainly wasn't a doctor.
There was a young lad, a young soldier who had hurt his hand and he'd gone to Craig as a regimental medical officer. And Craig had thought it was dislocated and tried to put it back into position, whereas in fact the bone was broken. And they said in court, you know, just how much pain this lad would have had to suffer for someone trying to manipulate a broken hand.
For the man who told a tissue of lies, this was the end. He was jailed for 16 weeks for impersonating a doctor and assaulting an army patient.
I think going to prison might show him that society doesn't accept that kind of behaviour, that there are consequences to your actions. Other than that, I don't really know if it will change him.
But whether you're trying to pass yourself off as a doctor, a dentist, or a holiday maker, for all the fakers in this programme, it seems fraud didn't pay after all. Well, I hope I've given you all the information you need this week to stay one step ahead of those con men. So from Fake Britain, it's goodbye.